Hey everybody, welcome back to the official Discovery Optics YouTube channel. My name is Andrew, and today I'm going to be talking you through and walking you through some products from Discovery Optics, specifically these scope rings. These are the 7075 variant of the two-piece scope rings. These are the 6061 variant of the two-piece scope rings. And then I have a 6061 cantilever mount that I'll be talking you through as well. All right, let's look at some of the differences between the variants that I have here on the table today. These are the 6061, and I'll open the box real briefly here so you can take a look and see what that ring is going to look like. This is a 30 millimeter variant right here, 1.45 height. I like 1.45 personally because it works well with the bolt guns and auto guns that I've run in the past, and it tends to allow me to fit a larger objective bell, which is very often something I run. You may not need that in your case. I have a 30 millimeter optic right here. This is the HD 2-12 from Discovery, and this one I can typically run pretty low, even on a low pair of rings, because it does not have a large objective bell. On the 5-25 series or 3-15 series, you may need to run something more like the 1.45s. This has underneath a Picatinny stopper there. It's going to index on your Picatinny rail. It's got Torx wrench hardware. And you're going to notice it also has the numerical indicator for your inch pounds for tightening on top, as well as the Picatinny tightening portion for your rail. And a couple other features I'll get to in just a second. That was the 6061 set. And now let's take a look at the 7075. There are just a couple differences here, but they're important differences. One of the differences with the 7075 variant here is going to be internally, if you take the rings off, inside there are some retaining pins or stopper pins, index pins if you would like. When you lock it in, it's going to help you find the correct threading pattern, and it's going to drop right in and tighten up the way it's supposed to. This also has a Picatinny stopper or indexing position underneath for your Picatinny rail. And again, it's been very popular on my channel. I've had a lot of people commenting on the fact that these torque specs that are listed on the rings have been very useful. So that's, again, on both spots where you're going to be torquing it down. I highly suggest getting a fat wrench so you can do that properly. So this is the 7075, just a bit of an improvement over the 6061 in my opinion. Lastly, let's take a look at the Discovery Optics cantilever mount. This has some things in common with the 6061 series, and it has some other things in common with the 7075 series. This is a 20 MOA mount. It means it has 20 minutes of angle built into the inclination of the base. It is a Picatinny attachment, and it also has Picatinny studs to align with your rail. It works especially well with AR rails, things of that nature, but all modern Weaver Picatinny type rails, this is going to fit just fine with that. As you can see on this side, it also includes the torque specs for each Torx. And those are really important because you don't want to over tighten that and damage your rail or actually break some of your hardware. So 30 inch-pounds is what this is set to, and that is appropriate for most rings. High quality rings are usually going to be in that area. And then on top, you can see that it also has markings for the scope rings itself, which are going to be 20 inch-pounds, which again is going to be right around that standard factory setting for all high quality rings. The fact that this is a 20 MOA mount allows you to get out really, really far with your optics. In particular, here's my EDAR. I run this out past 830 yards with a 300 blackout. One of the ways that I was able to achieve that kind of distance with such a slow bullet and low ballistic coefficient was because this has 20 minutes of angle, which allows me for more internal travel to be extracted to get out and touch those further targets. So I've got it mounted up on my personal optic here, just like that. Really happy with my personal usage of it right there. Something cool under the hood, I'm gonna go ahead and take the top rings off. This is what it has in common with the 7075. You can see that it has two retaining pins or indexing pins. And what that actually allows you to do is find the right index point and drop in your Torx tighten it down in the pattern which is listed on the side. If you can see here, there's a numerical pattern, and that pattern right there tells you how to go back and forth between all of the Allens, or the Torx in this case, and tighten them down appropriately so you have an even pressure across the whole set. Something impressive at this price point especially is that every one of these pair of rings feature inner bore grinding with high precision machinery. It grinds out the inner hole, and it achieves a smaller radial and coaxial error than other models on the market. This shiny bit that you can see here is going to match up and mate really nicely with any high quality precision scope, whether you have a 30mm or a 34, just buy the right size. And then remember to get yourself a fat wrench so you can torque it down to spec, and use these systematic numbers here to go back and forth, bounce back and forth until you get even pressure, torquing them to appropriate specs. People will often ask if it even really matters that much about the precision grinding, the instrumentation, where they're made, what they're made out of. People have a mindset saying that all metal is the same and does it really make a difference? And I've used poor quality rings, and I can promise you it does make a difference. These are some rings that you might find on Amazon. In fact, that's where I found them. I had them for years. I've had a couple pairs of them, and I've gone through a number of pairs of them previously. A couple things about them that is maybe a little bit problematic would be that you don't know what this is made out of, which means you don't know what the torque specs ought to be. This can be pot metal, and it very often is, which means it doesn't hold up well under recoil. Going back and forth from cold to hot, recoil from your rifle could actually damage these. They may crack and break. The threads on the screws sometimes are much harder than the threading of the aluminum themselves, and it strips out easily. Very often, these cheap kind of rings that you might find on eBay or Amazon that don't actually have some of the quality machining behind it, don't have quality operators behind them making these components, so they don't match up well. They're batch made in huge batches, and the QC is very, very poor. That means they do a couple things creatively to try to problem solve, and it doesn't really help you as the end user. One of the things they'll try to problem solve with is when it is not radial ground very evenly, and you'll get warpage in the rings. It might still fit your scope inside, but the problem is it doesn't fit evenly. So under recoil, things move. In these cheaper type of rings, kind of the junky rings that you wouldn't want to buy, unfortunately, your scope usually moves because of that lack of consistent grinding, and they put a piece of electrical tape on the top and the bottom inside to try to prevent your scope from moving, because they know from the factory this probably wasn't ground right and your scope isn't going to sit properly inside. Now, comparing that to the Discovery rings, that shiny portion there, the little bit of a beveled edge that you see, this is going to match up and meet perfectly with your round tube. And they're not going to have excessive force or crunching down, biting on the tube of the scope itself, which does damage things. It damages your image, and it may cause irreversible damage to the scope body itself. These cheaper rings just aren't worth it, and there's a lot of things about them that are going to make your shooting experience less pleasant or your shots less consistent. Yes, it does matter, and the quality metal from the 6061 or the 7075 is going to be sufficient to hold your optic in place, whether you're in harsh conditions or not, under rough recoil or not, and even with the elements trying to mix in, these are going to hold them in place. Now, Discovery Optics would like to get a pair of their 6061 aluminum rings in the hands of a lucky US subscriber. All you have to do for this giveaway is make sure you're subscribed to the official Discovery Optics YouTube channel, and then drop a comment down below letting us know what kind of rifle setup you'd like to see your 6061 rings on. My name is Andrew with Discovery Optics. Thanks guys for watching, and consider watching one of these videos that have been recommended for you.